I was speaking to my mother about one of my siblings when she suddenly said something that really caught my attention. She looked at me and said, "What's wrong with you kids? None of you have brains. You seem to follow your friends more than the righteous path in life. You're all really missing something in the head." She was basically implying a monkey see, monkey do type of mentality when it came to friendships. But somehow, when it came to Allah and the path of righteousness, we never followed that with the same intensity. At first, I was just intrigued by her quote. Younger me, who had no spiritual compass, would have never understood what she meant. But now that I'm older, more in tune with my soul, I realize I speak her soul's language. I actually understand what she was trying to say. I've shared my raw truth about my mom's upbringing before, how our relationship was bruised, layered with silence and miscommunication. So I hope this gives you deeper insight into how differently our spiritual journeys unfolded. Over the past few months, I've come to realize that my mother is spiritually in tune, but she lacked the ability to translate that wisdom in a way her children could understand. I'm sure the trauma and abuse we lived through only intensified her frustration. How could she explain what she didn't have the emotional words for? We clashed a lot growing up. It was never really anyone's fault. We were all just growing up together. Our mother came from trauma. We too were carrying trauma in our tiny bodies, with minds too overwhelmed to understand the depth of what she meant when she'd speak. She expected us to just get it, but we couldn't. It makes me wonder how many Somali Bantu families silently go through this. Parents trying to pour spirituality into their children, while the language, pain, and pressure all create a disconnect. And then everyone ends up misunderstood. In my case, from my own walk through this strange, layered reality, I believe Allah had mercy on my soul, because I once asked Him to let me step away. I didn't understand Islam. I didn't see the point. So I asked for space, and He gave it to me, but not without purpose, because not long after I was humbled in ways I can't even explain. Allah showed me pain. He showed me confusion. He showed me the cracks in my foundation, until I fell to my knees. And in that moment, I realized it was never my friends. It wasn't even my mom. It was Him, calling me back. It was like He said, "Your mother couldn't guide you. Your friends are blind, and you can't see reality. So I'll show you, and eventually, your faith will be unshakable. Then, you'll understand why your family is the way it is." And subhanallah, He really is the best of planners. He pulled me out of a spiritual coma I didn't know I was in. I remember as a child, I used to say to myself, I want to be wise. That desire was always tucked inside me, even though I was broken, even though I didn't know how to speak or cope. Something inside me listened. Looking back now, I know Allah was preparing me. I loved reading. I loved writing. I was fascinated by philosophy, though I never fully understood why. But maybe it was because literature gave me a mirror, a way to see myself without judgment. And maybe, just maybe, Allah knew. To break generational trauma that seemed impossible to break, He had to pick the angriest, most curious, most wounded girl in the family, the one who would question everything until she unleashed the truth. It started with books, it blossomed with questions, and it exploded with pain. People joke that I must have done shrooms to see the world the way I do, but I haven't. I once had a dream where everything zoomed into the tiniest blade of grass, and I heard a voice say, "We are all connected." That dream was in 2022, but even before then, I always felt drawn to trees. When I passed by them, my mind would wander. I'd think, how have they stood still for decades, watching generations come and go? It almost creeped me out. Sometimes I think they were talking to me. I just wasn't awake yet. I know I went off topic for a bit, but here's the deeper message. In order for my mother to heal and for us to understand life, we had to be brought to America. That's how healing started. Because here, we were given new tools to translate each other, to finally try to understand one another. And it doesn't just stop with my mother. Now she helps her friends, and I help mine. We're each extending what healing we found, backward and forward. Now, there's one more thing I want to add to this chapter. Originally, I was going to include it elsewhere, but I think it belongs here. Here's what I wanted to say. When you grow up traumatized, it's easy to forget that your parents were growing up too. They didn't have all the answers. They were just older children raising younger ones. Don't waste your life chasing justice from people who don't understand your pain. Some courts will see your trauma as a money grab, so forgive. And if necessary, go where Allah sits as the judge, where justice will be served in both this world and the hereafter. I'm autistic, so I know what it feels like to go through life not understanding why things happen. I used to shrug everything off like, oh, well, I guess this is just life. If my mom said, we're not opening cable, I would get upset. I didn't know why. She never explained. I didn't understand we were poor. I didn't know she was juggling a million things in her mind. All I knew was that we didn't have cable, and everyone else did. That's what I mean when I say we had a language barrier. And also, a trauma barrier. There were so many moments in my childhood where nothing made sense. We had so many questions, but we didn't know how to ask. Too much was happening at once. Here's a memory that stands out. We used to eat Rice Krispies cereal with sugar and milk. A lot. Or sometimes it was spaghetti with sugar. That was common too. Now that I'm older, I realize my mom didn't have food. There were times we didn't even have food stamps. She didn't know how to reapply. We didn't know how to help. She would cry, overwhelmed, overstimulated. She'd say we were useless. But looking back, she wasn't mad at us. She was drowning. She expected us to translate the world for her. We expected her to guide us through it. But no one taught either of us how to bridge the gap. She was still that same orphaned girl, now a single mother, in a foreign country, with children who didn't fully speak her language, except when demanding something. And I didn't even know my own language well enough to say the important things. So yes, I went off topic again, but the point is, my mother did the best she could as an unhealed child who had children of her own. And I forgive her. Even now, I still make spaghetti with sugar sometimes. It reminds me of that lost little girl, back when I had no clue what reality even was. Only Allah knows what we went through as a family. So be grateful for the small things your parents did. They held your world together with what little they had. And if your parent changed after postpartum, if they snapped and never came back, if they became a version of themselves you can't recognize, you're still allowed to grieve, and tell God everything. Because the truth is, He is always listening, always waiting. And even when you think it's all falling apart, it works out.